mai haere mai whānau. My name is Holly. I am here on Gadigal land in Sydney. Denise Duffy is in Taupo. We've got Danny Avis on Gadigal land in Sydney, and we are welcoming the one and only Cameron McIntosh, otherwise known as Photomac, to the Flight of the Next podcast. Welcome, Cam.
Thank you for having me, guys. It is a pleasure to be here.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what you do? I feel like most people know who you are, but for those who don't know who you are, the
Sure.
legend.
Most people recognise me by my bright yellow hats and bright yellow shoes I wear on the sidelines, which was bought in so my kids can find me when I'm on the TV. So they usually get quite excited about seeing Dad on TV, and this just makes it a little bit easier for them to spot. So that's why we do that. So I've been photographing for the Phoenix for this is my 13th season, working with the club. So I've seen a fair bit that's happened in that period of time. It's something I absolutely love doing. Wouldn't give up for anything in the world. It really, really is an absolute honour to be able to go on the sidelines every week and shoot the teams and get to know the people involved and all that sort of stuff. And obviously, I also work on the Yellow Fever podcast. My 10th season working on that in a couple of guises. We started back in 2015 for the Under 20s World Cup, and have just flowed on from there. So yeah, it's again, getting to talk like this, getting to talk football with your friends every week is, apart from the fact that it's quite cathartic outside work, it's either this or do it at the pub with your mates too. So it's just an environment and a task or a skill that's quite fun to do.
Oh, we're glad to have you. And as we've often recommended, please go and give the Fever FM podcast a listen if that's not already on your weekly rota. So we'll start by having a chat about the women's game before we have a bit more of a chat with Cam about his experience as a photographer. This was in Newcastle. It was quite warm. Danny and I both attended in person. We lost 1-0 to a very nice Cass Davis goal. There are a lot of talking points here. I think that we have some issues with how we set up or where we're weak. And I know, Danny, you had a lot to say on the sideline yesterday when we were chatting about it. Would you like to take us away with your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. Look, it was... I start off with the positives. It was a really nice game. It was a nice ground. They'd moved it from Newcastle, where the Newcastle women usually play, because the pitch wasn't up to scratch, something which we may see a bit more of this week. They moved it out to Maitland, up in the Hunter Valley, 45 minutes away from Newcastle, something like that. And it's a really nice little ground, a Maitland regional ground. Bit set up like Pororua Park. Stand down one side of the ground, but the pitch was perfect. It was a beautiful day, decent crowd. The stand was full, and it was a really good day for football. Bit too hot, it was about 32 degrees, but they had a couple of drinks breaks in each half. So, in that respect, it was a lovely day for a game of women's football. However, we weren't particularly good, unfortunately. We've spoken, I think, in sort of maybe optimistic terms in the first two games of the season. In that, look, we got putting some good stuff together. It just needs to come together and it'll happen, but this was probably, I think, our worst game of the season, and it probably brought up more questions than it brought up solutions from previous games, unfortunately. I think we had one shot possibly on target for the entire match, maybe two shots in total. Maybe not even that. Well, it's only 0 shots on target. Okay, maybe 2 shots completely. We had a reasonable amount of possession, I think, but we just couldn't turn that possession into decent attacking shots at all. Certainly in the first half, we seemed to have nothing in midfield. We dropped Maya McCutcheon back into the defence, and Daisy Brazendale had come up into the centre of the park. But we didn't really seem to create anything through that centre there. The ball was going out to primarily out to Jale out on the wings, and then she was trying to play small triangles with either Wynnum or Main or whoever to get through, and they just weren't working. They were just defending really well, and we just never really created anything. It was really quite frustrating, especially as I think Newcastle were okay, but they weren't really that much better than us. They were probably just playing more sensible balls. They had a habit of their keeper being really far up. So every time they were attacking, the keeper was way up, almost on the halfway line at times, which they found out to their cost last week when their keeper got sent off after trying to save a ball when they were halfway up the pitch. And it just seemed an obvious tactic for us just to shoot whenever possible because you could loop it over. I know Holly was shouting shoot at every opportunity, and we never seemed to do that. We all just seemed to take too much time getting it out to Jale, getting it to feet, and then they would have three people around us really quickly, and we just didn't have the skill to get out of those positions. And we often had people, Manair Elliott, with a lot of space out wide, or Main out wide, in the middle, and we never managed to get the ball to them. And so we never really created anything, even though we had a bit of the ball. It was very frustrating, I found, of the game, because we didn't seem to answer any of the problems or the questions that we that had been posed to us in the last two matches. So I found it really frustrating. We got better in the second half. We brought some players on, which gave us a lot of a bit more energy. So Ferguson up front, who's nice and fast, and immediately started battling in there and gave us an outlet there. Tanaka came on as well. And again, she gave a fair bit of energy, but still we weren't really able to create many chances up front, and that was a little bit frustrating. Again, Newcastle didn't create a lot of chances. Villau saved what she needed to save, except for what was really, I guess, quite a really good goal from out near the sideline, just beneath us, where she shot from there, and Villau unfortunately just wasn't tall enough to knock it over. So frustrating at the end. I'm not sure what the answer is going forward, but they certainly do need to look at how they create clearer cut chances more so than they did yesterday.
All right, Cam, you were watching from, I'm assuming, the comfort of your own home instead of standing in that Maitland sun. What did you think?
Well, actually, I was watching delayed because I was covering the men's reserves game for at Fraser Park. So my impression has been every time I've seen them this season, we are a little ponderous through transition. Um, I feel what we're missing most isn't the ability of Kate Taylor; it's the leadership of Kate Taylor. The ability to lead the players, to understand what's required of to lift a player within that framework that we're playing. Um, if we because the players we have are all talented footballers. For me, there's like I speak very highly of Daisy Brazendale. I think she's an excellent footballer and will turn into a very good football fern in the future. Maya McCutcheon is an absolute find, fantastic footballer, really really good footballer. We all know the ability that Alyssa Wynnum has on the ball. She is unsurpassed within that team and possibly one of the most gifted on the ball footballers within the league. The problem we have is combining all of that into a fast moving, nice transition where we can get players into space. We just seem to be lacking that cohesiveness at this point. Now, I think with the leadership of someone like Taylor, who the game is playing in front of her most of the time, we'd actually make a bit of a difference with them there. But that's not something that you can just grab. That's not something you can just find instantly. You know what I mean? She's been playing. She played 3 years with that club. She understood it inside out, and she had the mana that comes with being a senior player within that environment. So I think perhaps what we actually need to do is play Olivia Ferguson from the start. Now there may be a fitness issue. There may be I don't know a tactical thing that Temps is trying to achieve. But I feel like Jale is an incredibly talented footballer, but she likes to either flick wide to be an 11 rather than play as a 9 through the middle. And Emma Main is again more of a 10 rather than a 9. We're lacking that focal point of that attack. And if we're ponderous through midfield without a focal point of attack, then we're not going to be able to create many chances, and that's kind of showing up. So that's where I think we possibly need to change. But again, it's early days, and this season's long. There's still plenty of time to improve on these things. The key here being we've only just started. You're bringing in some pros who haven't been here before. It will come. We've lost 3 games, but we've lost 3 games by very narrow margins, and we've been unlucky in some parts to have that happen too. So.
Hey, I don't know who's going next, but I'll just jump in. I'm just riffing on what both of you guys are saying here. Um, yeah, that point about Kate Taylor and her leadership. I mean, I think there were a lot of players last year that had that game time maturity that are not on the roster this year. And we are looking for you know that sort of leadership. And I think Mackenzie Berry, I think even people like Zoe Meakin are stepping up. I think Alyssa Winham is stepping up, and just their personalities and the personality of the team is starting to kind of come together. I mean, I'm a Grace Jolley fan. I really want to see her in there. Like, she has the ability to score, so absolutely put her more in a position to score. I know with a national team she might play a little bit wider sometimes, but man, just get that soccer knowledge in front of the net. Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky year in that this is Paul Temple's second year. And yes, last year, I mean, it started lights out and it was really, really on fire. And I'm just not feeling that same sort of fire of like they know where each other should be, and the passes are quick and the passes are aggressive, and like they're scaring people. They're not scaring other teams yet. And I feel like other teams might catch on to that vibe of like, I don't know, the Knicks are a little vulnerable here. So, I'm just looking to see what kind of changes are going to be made, and how this ship is going to come together.
I think it does need to come together is perhaps a good term. I found that the players looked visibly frustrated with each other when there was a miss pass. It's possible that you don't see that as well on the broadcast because sometimes the camera has moved away, but you could see gestures and sighs and things being said. I mean, it's pretty normal for a team to be that way, but it's clear they're not gelling, so that needs to come together. And there were just a lot of, I don't know whether people were afraid to shoot. I'm not sure that's the right way to put it, but there was just not shots when there should have been shots. At one point, Jale ran 40 meters with the ball, just dribbling it straight up the front, and could have shot at any time because their keeper was so far off the line. But she held it. She put a little dinky pass off to Manaya, who wasn't making the run. So it's just not coming together. I think we were also quite weak down the wings. They targeted us very, very clearly with Lauren Allen, who was great down the wing. They were targeting us down there every time. I don't know how many runs she did, but it was over and over and over again. And Zoe was marking her, and Zoe tends to push up a little bit. So I don't know whether it's a discipline thing in terms of position, but either way, they did find a way to target us, and we have to avoid that happening again in the future. One of the things I did want to talk about was the horrible injury that Flea copped. She was going for the ball. It was quite hard to see. Like, it was very, very hard to actually see what happened. You really had to slow down the slow motion to catch it. Claudia Chico's just running for the ball, and just her elbows high. Flea is so short, her elbows high enough that she's just caught her across the face. And a lot of pain, went straight to the hospital, basically, for a scan and stitches. Really not a good injury, and I don't know when she'll be back. She's almost certainly not going to be back for Friday. And that is a massive loss for us, talking about leadership on the field. So we really hope that Flea starts feeling better as soon as possible. So do we want to talk about Adelaide? This is going to be Unite Round. It's on Friday. Unite Round's supposed to be at Leichhardt Oval. If anyone watched the Sydney Derby, Women's Sydney Derby on Saturday, Leichhardt Oval is in an unacceptable state to play on, safety-wise, and also just the quality of the football that you can play when the pitch is nice and smooth. So the rumour is that potentially it'll be moved to Jubilee. So in Cogra, which is where Sydney FC used to play their games when Allianz Stadium was being demolished and rebuilt. The fan experience is nowhere near as good there, but I'd rather a safe pitch. How are we feeling about Adelaide? They are on fire with Fiona Watts at the moment, and I just worry that we don't have it together enough to really pull something off against Adelaide. Who has a thought about that? Denise?
I actually don't have a thought about that. Like, I really think, let's see, Adelaide has won their last two. They lost their first match. When you're trying to get your stuff together, you don't want to come up against a team that, has a bit of a streak going on. It's still the beginning of the season. The Knicks can still get it together, but it gets harder and harder when these matches are away. I mean, the Unite round is all in Sydney, right? And so, I mean, that's not exactly home ground for the Knicks. And, I don't even know if this is counted as a home match or an away match. Oh, sorry, my dog. Um, but I don't see any advantage for the Wellington Phoenix this weekend. They need to come home. Like, they need to get the yellow fever, the whatever behind them. They need fans cheering for them. And I wish them all the best this weekend. I'll be watching. Go Knicks. Good luck.
Yeah, I think, look, if you take the lessons learned from the games we've played so far, and the fact that we've lost our captain, I can see this being quite a tough week. But the team has the ability to do well in this game. Like, having a camp for a week is a great scheme. They're in with each other the whole time. They can work on those small defining issues that they've had in the classroom, on the pitch. You know what I mean? There's plenty of opportunity there to fix this stuff. I think the loss of Flea will be massive. I genuinely do, because she is the leader on the field. You can see that not just in the way she plays, but the mana she carries around the squad as well. I genuinely hope she'll be able to play, but let's be honest, she probably isn't. It looks quite a nasty injury at the time, and precaution suggests that if she's got a head injury like that, yeah, it's probably not going to be too available for the game. Big shame, massive shoes to fill for whoever comes in there, but alternately, it means you may end up having a change of formation. You may end up playing with 2 6s rather than 2 8s to cover the fact that Flea can't be doing all of the work that she's been doing in that midfield. And that might be what we're missing with that in that central midfield, to allow the creative tens a bit more space, a bit more ability, a bit more time on the ball to find those people in front of them. I don't know. I'm spitballing because you want something to change. You want it to change quickly, and whilst the personnel is there and available to do so, whether it comes together is a different story. I genuinely hope it does. I think you're right. It's going to be a tough one this weekend, and they're not back in Wellington again until December the 8th. So there's it's a fair bit of time before they're back here for a game in front of the home crowd. So tough start to the season doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real tough one, and in some ways, damage limitation is possibly a phrase that would come to mind. The positives are that they're staying in Australia for the entire time, so it's not like they're flying back and flying out again. They're staying here. They're in Parramatta for the week, so as Cam says, they can stick together. I think there probably would have been certainly personnel change even without Flea going out. She would have played, but I think they would have changed stuff. Lara Wall's been coming on in the second half of the past few games, and we just seem to look more comfortable at the back when she's there. So I imagine she will come in from the start. Hopefully she's fit enough, which will allow Maya McCutcheon to go up in midfield. And I can see, as Cam said, 2-6 McCutcheon and Brazendale being there as sort of a solid double pivot in midfield, with possibly Wynnum sitting just in front of them and hopefully trying to dictate a bit of play. Wynnum was taken off at half time in the game just gone. She didn't really get involved in the first half. One thing that we found in that game, the Newcastle were very quickly onto us. Not so much pressing, but just right up in their faces. As soon as they got the ball, there was a person on their toes, and we were stood just behind basically the Newcastle dugout. We can hear their coach shouting at them to constantly get them on their toes. He said, "Stand on their toes." He was saying every time, and I think some of the players were saying that that was happening quite a lot, and they were hoping that the ref had pull that up earlier, and the ref didn't and let it go. So hopefully we can learn a bit from that and release the ball quicker, because I saw Zona Meakin and Tiana Jaber sometimes were getting into fights for the ball. They had the ball and they were getting on them so quick that they were constantly seemed to be sort of fighting one on one with the ball, which they came off. Sometimes they got the ball, but sometimes they didn't get the ball, and they needed to pass the ball quicker and move it quicker, which I think we've all sort of said already. So hopefully we can do that, maybe with a better base in midfield with McCutcheon and Brazendale, and then move it out, hopefully to the quicker wings, and that where maybe Main on one wing, maybe Tanaka on the other, with their pace, and Ferguson as well. Maybe that's a way to do that. So more sitting back and trying to hit people on the transition. I think if we get away with a clean sheet, I'll be very, very happy, even if we don't score, because I think we're going to be struggling otherwise, missing Flea, and the fact that we haven't lit up the league in terms of attacking ability so far. But there's stuff to build on. As Cam says, there's a long way to go in the season as yet. We're not writing them off, but there's work to be done.
Yeah, I think you got to get Maya back into her natural positions. Not tucked away. She's someone who they brought in as an international player who should have. I mean, she was at North Carolina Courage. That's a very good team, one of my favorite teams, and she should be able to really be a distributor. I know she's a defensive midfielder, but she should be able to really give a little bit more creativity and really do her thing in the midfield.
Well, here's hoping that there is an improvement despite what appears to be the loss of Flea. Hopefully the game goes as well as possible. We will see you there, whether that is at Leichhardt Oval or at Cogra. We will have a good crowd there for both of those games in Unite Round, as is usually the case. So now that we've covered that, here's our most exciting part of the episode is getting to have a chat with Cam about being the photographer and what that's like to be the photographer for the team and what it's like on a match day, for example. So, Cam, can you start by telling us how you got into sports photography?
Yeah, so I picked it up as a hobby when I was living in the UK 20 years ago. And I was going to my first Formula One Grand Prix, wanted to take some nice photos. So bought a entry-level SLR with a decent length lens and just went from there basically. And when I moved back to New Zealand and I was playing football back here for Waterside, I'd be playing on a Saturday and taking photographs for the women's firsts on a Sunday, back when they had Emma Ralston and CJ Bott, playing for them, footballers who've gone on to play at the highest level. So I was doing that, and then I broke my leg playing football, so I had to retire, but still wanted to be involved. So basically just flowed on with the photography into shooting Waterside games on both days of the weekend. This is before I had children, so that made that a lot easier. That's basically how it grew into being Photomac into what it is today. I got into shooting for the Phoenix via the work that I was doing with Waterside. Someone who worked for the Phoenix saw what I was doing, and they needed a photographer, and contacted me and asked me to come along and do some work for them. That was back in early 2012, and snowballed from there and started doing what I do now.
So, what do game days look like for you? You're obviously not enjoying it from the stands. There's a lot of work there, and you're showing up early and you're leaving late. What does that roughly look like? And is it different for Sky than it is for Porirua Park?
Yeah, very different. I'll go through what I do for a match day in general to start with. Generally, I will get, before game day, I'll get a run of what the club requires for the day. There's a couple of guys that I work with who come along and do photos as well, and we will split the jobs up. for the longest time it was just me, and on a match day where it was just me, I would turn up to the ground. I'm there a couple of hours before kickoff, so I can photograph the players arriving. Generally, because they all come individually, and they have about a 45-minute span of where they actually arrive in the ground, and the latest time they have to be there. So I kind of get there, get a few images of them coming in, so the club can post if they want to post. They don't always, but take those photographs and then file them. Then I go up to the gates and in amongst the concourse and try and get some fan stuff, fans arriving, kids seeing Nixie. Generally I'll have some corporate stuff I need to do, so sponsors have activations on the concourse, and I'll go along and take imagery of people doing those particular activities with sponsors in the background to show what they've been up to, that kind of stuff. There might be, if there's something on pre-match, like at the last game, there was the kids march at the stadium, the annual kids march. They have each club, I think, pretty sure it's each club within Wellington, will have kids teams that get to walk around on the field pre-match, and we want to cover that. So if that's something I need to do, I'll be down there and take photos of that. Didn't have to do that this year, gave that to somebody else, which was really helpful. And then, so I'm usually trying to be down on the pitch after doing fan stuff about, let's say, half an hour before kickoff, so I can get a few warm-up photos if that's required, or they have the Oppo Best Seats, which you can win in a competition. I'm sure you guys have seen the competition that the Phoenix runs. So get photos of that, again, sponsorship stuff. So that tends to take up. So doing the sponsorship stuff, the fan stuff, and a bit of warm-up stuff tends to take up most of my 2 hours prior to kickoff. And then where possible, if I'm doing it running a remote control camera, for example, behind a goal, setting that up before the players come out. So, basically trying to cover off all the bases of those sorts of things. Sorry, my cat's about to walk across in front of the camera. Trying to cover off all those sorts of things as much as possible before the game kicks off. Then I'll go to halfway. Once the players have come off from their warm-ups, I'll go to halfway and take photos of the person doing the coin toss for the day, if they have somebody that does the coin toss that day. And then need to get, as the players are coming out, have to get photos of all the mascots. Every single mascot that's walking out with a player, I have to get every single mascot, an individual frame with the player behind them that they're doing. So that's every game. And then try and shoot the banner that the Yellow Fever put up if there is one. Then there's a team photo, I have to cover that as well. And then again, the coin toss, when that actually happens, you have to try and get that coverage as well. During the game's actually the easy part. There's literally it's 45 minutes and a half where I get to just sit and photograph football. And that's the part that I love doing. Obviously, that's the part that I've been doing for 17 years around Wellington now, 16, 17 years around Wellington. So it's the bit that I feel I'm the best at. So that's why I enjoy it the most. So I do that for 45 minutes. I always go to the attacking end where the Phoenix are attacking, as that's where you're most likely to get celebration photographs. And the celebration photographs is what promotes most engagement, whether it be on my page or whether it be on the Phoenix's page. You want to get as good a photograph as you can of any celebration from any goal. It is always what people love to see. So then at halftime, there will be usually an activation on the field, which I have to cover. And there's also they have children playing at halftime, McDonald's first kicks on the field, so I have to cover off that as well. So it generally means I don't get down the tunnel to have a drink or a break during halftime. Second half starts again, 45 minutes of sitting down photographing football. So that's the good part. Then at full time, there is the signing session. So the players will go and sign autographs for all the kids. I say kids, for whoever wants one. That's hanging out around the southern end, behind the southern goal. That generally goes for about half an hour. I think they finish up about half an hour after the final whistle. They generally have finished up that. And then it's down the tunnel. And that's where you fill photo requests. So if any player wants a request, they've got some family there and they like a photo with the family, or if there's some that tends to be the most common one. So they'll say they've got the family area there, and can you get some stuff with them on the field and that kind of thing. So we do that quite often. Then it's back down the tunnel into the photographer's room where I'll sit, and usually I'll be there for another hour after I've come in from that signing session, editing imagery. So I try and get like 50 to 60 photographs up as soon as I possibly can after the final whistle, of the players playing the game, because they're the ones that will want the imagery first. They're the ones that share the imagery, and obviously they share my imagery. Then that's good for me. So I try and get that out as fast as I possibly can. And then so it puts me at the stadium for somewhere between 6.5 and 7 hours on a match day. And then once I get home, it's usually another 2 to 3 hours of editing imagery that night. And then hopefully that's it for the game. But often it's the next day as well. We're editing more imagery the next day, but that will tend to be things like your halftime activation, the corporate stuff, which won't get a lot of traction through social media, but is really important for the club and really important for the sponsors, and is the kind of thing that they go back to regularly. So that's the important part. So that's has to be done, like really important part of it, but it's not as urgent, particularly if it's a Friday or Saturday night game and there's not going to be too many people in the office the next day to have to worry about that stuff. So yeah, Sunday night games not so good though.
Did you find it easier at Porirua Park? It's a lot smaller there. I kind of imagine it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's a lot. There is a lot smaller. There's obviously the smaller crowds. The facilities obviously at Sky Stadium are world class, and Porirua, it's a much smaller space, so much more. There's a lot. You have to be a bit more respectful of everybody else that's around. You're not going to be spreading out and that sort of thing. But you are much closer to fans during the game. You can interact with fans better. It's really is quite easy to get good, imagery of the fans whilst you're there. And again, like the game itself, that's the same. That's the same no matter where you play it. I mean, the actual being on the pitch and photographing the football, it doesn't matter what the teams are. It doesn't matter what location you're at. A football field's a football field, and the game is what it is. You can shoot that, and if you've got that experience and that skill, then for me, the game that's on the field isn't difficult to cover at all. So it's how the experience of Porirua Park is very different. It's a lot quieter. It's a lot smaller, but that has advantages where so you can access the fans. The fans have access to the players easier, and the women are really, really good at interacting with the fans that hang around for the autographs after. Like actually sensational at it. It's something that they all seem to do so very, very well. And across the club, to be fair, the men do a very good job of that too. But it's a different environment. It's to be fair, I actually quite like the fact that they don't do the double headers anymore. So if you can imagine if there was a double header at the stadium, for me, where I'm at the ground 2 hours before the first game, and I leave the ground 2 hours after the second game, and I have therefore 5,000 frames to go through after a game. It's an awful lot of work. The split, even if they're one day after the other, the fact that there's that gap between them lets me focus specifically on whatever game that I've just shot. It makes my workflow a lot smoother than trying to pump out 200 frames of a game, so all the players have something, but across 2 games in that short period of time. It's very hard.
Yes, I know you had some questions.
I have tons of questions. Holly asked the most important one of that I wondered about what game days like. But speaking of like the act of taking photos, I mean, what are you like with the players? Um, are you chatty? Are you sort of more of an observant kind of photographers? What's your style around that?
Sure. I'm naturally a chatty person anyway. People would probably describe me as that and have done many times in the past. I do like to chat to people, but it's important to be respectful of the players. They're at work. This is their job. I'm at work. This is my job. we need to have. I will always start off with it being a cordial, friendly relationship. Does that make sense? So I will always try and make myself as approachable for a player, but I will let the players lead that relationship. If they would like to have a chat and say hi, that's cool. And if they're smiling, happy, that's always good too. But not all players are there for that reason. Some players are, very. This is my job, and I'm just doing my job, and they don't want to chat to the photographer who's on the side. That's also fine. So I'll kind of try and let the players lead the relationships. If they want to have a chat and so on and so forth, I'll happily do that as well. But you do have to keep it as professional as you possibly can. I think the other thing is I'm a middle-aged guy, and a lot of these players, both on the men's side and the women's side, are a lot younger than me, and like entirely different generation to me. And they're closer in age to my daughter than they are to me, and so that's something I try and take into these situations. You know what I mean? It's like some of the guys who are going to be in their 30s and towards the tail end of the career are going to be much more comfortable around me, but the young guys who are just breaking through, they don't know how to relate to a guy who's their dad's age. Some of the young women who are breaking through, again, don't know how to relate to a guy who's their dad's age, and you need to be aware of that and treat it as such.
Great points. Let's geek out. What kind of equipment do you use? Like, what are your favorite tools that you have in your
my favourite tool is one that I'm about to buy. I'm very excited. I'm picking up in a couple of weeks. Is a Canon R6 Mark II. So I'm just very, very excited. Been saving up the coins for that, so that's quite good. I have a lot of gear. My favourite cameras that I have are Canon 7D Mark II and a Canon 5D Mark III, which I love. Love both of them. I run a 0.8 IS, which is one of the best lenses that Canon make, for my personal opinion. And then that's the zoom lens. And then I have a telephoto, which is fixed 400mm lens, which means I can do close-up work down the other end of the field. So if I sit at the top of the box, I can get really nice, like close-up photographs of a goalkeeper down the other end making saves and things. So that's ideal. Then I have my old cameras, which tend to be 7D. So I've had those for a long time, back when they were new cameras. I have 3 of those, and I tend to throw on a wide-angled lens and use them as my behind the goal camera. So that way, when I'm running the remote control, if I lose the camera because it gets hit by a ball, all I'm really losing is the remote control, and I can replace that for $100. Whereas if I chucked one of my favourite cameras behind the goal, I may be disappointed if I ended up losing one of those. So it's one of those things. But that's why it's good to have 3 of those and be comfortable that if it gets hit, which is likely it's going to happen, and it has happened to everybody, then be aware that you are going to, you might lose that. So that's mine. So yeah, I tend to run 3 cameras at a game. I usually take 4 just to be on the safe side, and one of them will just stay in my bag and will only come out if I absolutely need it, or if something happens to another camera. It's always best to have a backup plan, right? So if something goes wrong, you can still take the imagery and get the imagery that you require. I have a 17 to 40, I think it is, L series wide-angled lens, which can't be used on the 5D because it goes slightly fisheye when it's at fully out, so you have to use that on the 7, but I'll use that for the post-match signing sessions. So I tend to use the 7D Mark II on the 400mm and the 5D Mark III on the 70 to 200, and then swap the 7D Mark II between those lenses when I'm doing the fan stuff. So that's the
cool stuff.
Gig out stuff, yeah. So
yeah,
if you have a look at my TikTok account, before one of the games last season, I laid out all my gear that I was taking with me to one of the games and said, here it is. So you can took a video of it and stuck it up, so you can actually see what I take. And that was including like laptops and memory cards and all the other rubbish and card readers and things and all that sort of stuff that comes with being the photographer, because obviously it's not just cameras, and you don't have a laptop, you can't edit any of that stuff.
So do any of your, like, how do the Knicks PR and social media team get your images? Is it
Dropbox.
via Dropbox? So
Yeah.
Are you recording onto a card, or are you recording onto a card that goes to Bluetooth?
Yeah, so no, I just record onto SD or compact flash, depends on the camera, and then transfer that to my laptop. So um,
Okay.
I have the capacity to live file, so take the photographs, chuck them on your laptop, send them up. But because Getty's cover the league, and you've also got Photosport doing exactly that sort of thing, there's no necessity there for me to do that sort of stuff. Um, there's no there's no urgency there for those frames to be up within the minute of me taking them, because there's already people doing that the club have access to if they wish to use them. So I'm not overly concerned about doing live file, though I can do it if they wish me to, and it's not difficult. I probably will in the away game in the derby to Auckland, um, purely because I don't have anything else going on around that game other than shooting the Phoenix team, and so there's not going to be any of the sponsor fan stuff that I would usually have to do around that game if it was at Sky Stadium, for example. So I'll probably live file there just because I can, and it's that way I've got some imagery out before I have to fly back to Wellington that night.
And do you have any sort of suggestions for, people listening to the podcast that might go, oh, I want to photograph, my daughter's soccer match, or just, this or that? What kind of setup what kind of lens would you recommend, say under $2,000 for someone who's trying to get out there and just do it?
Yep, I would say don't buy new, buy secondhand. Buy off Trade Me or somewhere similar, or Facebook, marketplace, whatever. Um, See if you can pick up a good secondhand 70 to 200. That's a really versatile lens which covers a pile of the field, an awful lot of the field. Um, but if you are limited to budget, the Canon make, and I will go Canon. I know Nikon is a fantastic brand; they do fantastic work. The cameras are great, but I don't know Nikon because I don't use Nikon, so I can't tell you what's good in Nikon. I can tell you what's good in Canon, and Canon make fantastic gear. So, and you can pick up something decent. You can pick up an old school 70, 80, 90D camera, which is it's an entry level kind of SLR for not a whole lot of money, and you can find yourself a decent second tier lens like a USM lens that can go out to 300mm, 250mm very, very inexpensively. So if you are concerned about budget, if you look around, you can definitely find the stuff that you want. Don't spend a lot of money on it until you know that it's what you want to do, because photography gear is expensive. It's very, very expensive, and the top end gear gets even more, like it's the kind of stuff where I look at it now and I look at what I have, and I know I have really good equipment that takes fantastic photos, but it could still be better. And like there's the lens and the cameras that I want individually cost more than all the stuff I use on a game day. They're just, it's just the amount of money you can spend on it is staggeringly high. So don't do that if you don't know it's the thing that you're really going to be interested in. Buy some stuff off secondhand, see if you enjoy it, and then if you do, then start investing in the better gear.
The question, Cam.
Yeah.
When you're at the game and you're set up there trying to photograph the game, and you're waiting for a celebration from a player, and you're looking down the arena, see if there's anything, and so you're concentrating, focusing on the game all the way through. Do you ever get a chance to actually enjoy it? I mean, can you enjoy watching the game and seeing what's happened?
Yeah.
Or do you have to
Yeah, I
rewatch the
understand.
match afterwards and go, okay, all right, yeah, Rufa was really good then?
Well, because I talk on the pod, I tend to rewatch the games anyway. Because I say this to my friends, my perspective is very limited of what's going on because I'm watching it down a viewfinder. So I'm watching the ball and I'm concentrating on the ball. I can't see formation. I can't see off the ball movements. I can't see like off the ball incidents. I can't see any of that stuff that goes on. So for me to be able to comment on it in a intelligent way at all, I kind of need to at least rewatch the half an hour highlights package, be able to really see the main incidents. I love what I do. Love what I do. I can't stress that enough. I wouldn't give it up for anything in the world. I absolutely love it. I consider it a privilege to be able to be on the match day, be on the pitch on a match day, to have, I've made over the 13 years, I've made some, really long lasting friendships and people that now live all over the world that I'm still in contact with on a regular basis, And yeah, it's not just for me. I love I really enjoy the games. I really do enjoy the games. I enjoy watching them and photographing them and being involved with them. And yeah, it's not. It doesn't feel like work, even though it is. If it felt like work, it probably might lose its luster, but it really doesn't. It feels it's just fun. It's enjoyable. It's. I guess when you find that thing that you love to do, that you want to do for your job, for your life. People say if you do the thing you love, you'll work a day in your life. That's basically it.
What's been, I'm a little bit curious now with all of your equipment and the planning. Are there any good stories of things going wrong, or what's the worst day you had? You showed up and things wouldn't turn on, or if you want to share
Yeah.
anything like that?
I've had one game which I messed up. This was back in 2015, and it was just after my grandmother passed away. And I'd been up in Palmerston North dealing with my family in that situation, and drove back to Wellington to photograph the game that day. And I shot the whole game in black and white and didn't realise. Yeah. So fortunately, I had somebody else photographing that game with me, so we still got content, which was really good. But yeah, it was like, actually, okay, yeah, it's understandable. The people working at the club at the time were like, actually, yeah, that's fine, Cam. It is what it is. We understand, and yeah, let that one slide. So, but that would probably be the single worst one I've had. Like shooting in the rain and gear getting foggy on the inside because it was raining so hard I couldn't keep it dry. It's a bit of a worry. That wasn't fun. Um, but yeah, there's nothing apart from that really. The one thing I feel bad about was not catching Roy when he tumbled over the barrier. Do you guys remember that game many moons ago where Roy Krishna crashed into the barrier and went tumbling over, and I was standing right beside him, and we're not supposed to touch the players in this. Like, I'm not supposed to go anywhere near them during the game. Um, and he tumbled over right beside me, and I could put an arm out and I could have caught the guy and stopped them falling over. But at the time, I was more worried about getting in trouble for touching a player in the game than actually saving him. But I did look like a proper. So, and I don't want to swear on your podcast, but I didn't paint me in the best light. And I do have a great photograph though of me watching the game and with my cameras there, and Roy with his legs sticking in the air over the barrier, and I obviously down, and me not paying any attention to him at all and looking like a horrible person. So yeah, he was all right. I asked him if he was okay when he was down there, and he groaned. So I'm like, oh, well, he's still alive. That's a good thing.
That's absolutely incredible, and thank you so much for sharing that stuff with us. And to any of our listeners, if you see Cam around, do say hello. We can vouch that he's a very lovely guy. Cam, do you want to list all the places that people can follow you or reach out to you? I know you do photography for other events as well.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter. It's at NZ Photomac, and the same on Instagram and TikTok, and on Facebook you'll find me as Photomac NZ. Feel free to reach out. If you do send me out, say hi. You might have to tell me who you are if you follow me, because obviously a lot of people don't have handles that match their names, obviously. So I don't necessarily know everybody, but if you follow what I do and you like what I do, reach out, say hi. Always keen to have a chat. Always keen to meet fans, and I always make time for you if you want to have a stop and have a chat.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for the discussion we've had. Good luck to the next ladies and the next men this coming week. Thanks for listening. We are on YouTube, on all of the major podcast platforms. You can follow Flight of the Nix on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.